Hi there, Angela Beeching here, and I'm talking to you today about concert programming. I'm really excited about this because there's been a lot of questions that have come up recently. And even though I've written about concert programming a bunch before, I wanted to bring you an example, a stellar example of concert programming that I thought might help make more sense of this and give you ideas on how you can play with your own concert programming so that it makes it easier to get concerts that you want because you're going to be sending out a description of the program in your pitches and really just a sense of, okay, what is energizing? What would pique the curiosity of a reader? Whether you're simply promoting a concert that you are producing or you're sending out the concert programming ideas as a pitch, we all need to get good at concert programming. So what I've got is a fabulous example that comes to us from Chameleon Arts Ensemble. I got their little mailer here for the concert season, this coming season. And I held on to it because I thought, first of all, the programming itself is fabulous and the description of it is really a grabber. Um, they do 5 main concerts. I just wanted to sort of highlight 3 of them. They're all great, but I wanted to highlight 3 of them specifically for you. And again, people wonder, I don't know, people wonder like what makes something great programming, or how am I supposed to learn from what somebody else did here? And it's not that we're going to copy what they've done. But what I'm hoping you'll get is some principles for thinking about your concert programming, maybe in a new way that gives you inspiration and material ideas for your next programming. So, yeah, so I just want to say there's 2 sides of this. There's the description of your programming that needs to go in the email pitch that a concert presenter has to find intriguing enough to click play and get interested in you, right? And there's that same, usually the same description or same version of it that the concert presenter, once they have booked you, that they're going to use to promote the concert. So the way you talk about your program, the actual programming itself, and the way you talk about it is useful for getting the gig and for promoting the gig. It's really important. And I run into a lot of people who just want to imagine, I can understand this, want to imagine that the music itself is going to speak for itself. And it doesn't. The truth is, lots of people that you'd love to have come to your concerts are not familiar with the repertoire that you're playing. And so they don't know, why is this relevant to them now? You telling us about how it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, or you having great quotes, is not going to be enough. And if you're not a household name, you as a performer, if that's not going to be enough to grab people's attention and to get them to come out for this concert, you need to do more. So let me bring up, I wanted to see if I can do this right. Share screen. Um, I want to be able to bring up one at a time here. So here we go. This is the first concert of their season. It's going to be October 11th. And what you might first notice is we've got 5 composers. Um, Chameleon Arts Ensemble is a mixed ensemble. So they pull from their larger group of artists to play in different formats, and it gives them a lot of range of possibility for what can happen in a concert. But the challenge, whether you're a solo artist, a string quartet, a piano trio, a jazz sextet, whatever you are, you're still going to have to write about what you're offering. So it's the same problem for everybody. So I often talk to musicians about the idea of what's the word? Thematic programming, where you take an idea and you flesh that out with the program itself. And I often find when I'm telling musicians about this that their eyes roll because we have all seen thematic programming that leaves a lot to be desired. I hope that I do not keep seeing the same old tired tropes used for concert programming, like a Valentine's Day concert, all programmed around love, right? In all its forms. We've seen that a gazillion times. Same thing with the idea of a musical journey, people using that as the frame for a concert of music by composers from different countries. It's been way overused. So here we've got a title, Beneath the Setting Sun. And you might say, okay, what's that about? Well, let's take a look. William Grant Still, there's Summerland, John Adams' Road Movies. Okay, so these are two works that have a programmatic title. I don't know how that connects with, the setting sun. Then Gabriel Fauré's Sonata, great. And Johannes Brahms' The Clarinet Quintet, great. Those aren't programmatic. And then Eleanor Alberga, not sure if that's how she pronounces her name, No Man's Land Lullaby. So looking at these 5 works, I'm thinking, what is that to write home about? Like, how am I don't know these works, why should I care as a concert presenter or as an audience member? And we've got this title, Beneath the Setting Sun. So let's look at the description here, because this is likely what you'd want to use if you were sending out a concert pitch. Now, this is for a group's own home series. So they're using this when they're sending it out to audience members, but it's the same deal if you're trying to get a booking. So the description reads, William Grant Still shares a radiant vision of the soul's journey to the afterlife, while John Adams takes us on a groovy minimalist road trip. Okay, that's kind of, I don't know how that fits in. Eleanor Alberga transforms a famous cradle song into an exquisite lament on the fragility of our existence. Okay, we're getting philosophical. And Brahms, inspired by the alluring voice of the clarinet, offers one of the most achingly beautiful twilight works ever written, the parting gift of an extraordinary artist and a life well lived. Okay, so at the end, I get this. The setting sun at the end of a life well lived. Now that I kind of get the punchline here, and you go back and think about how that connects to all of the works, right? With the cradle song, that's an exquisite lament on the fragility of our existence. Yes, that absolutely makes sense with the setting sun. John Adams' road trip, minimalist road trip. Yeah, if you think about the journey of a life, right? It is a kind of trip. And William Grant's soul's journey to the afterlife. So to me, now this whole thing makes sense. And if I'm just imagining, let's say I have a friend who's planning on going to this concert, and they sent me this description and they said, do you want to go? And let's imagine I don't know this group at all. Would I be interested based on this description? Yeah, I would. Is it because it's getting philosophical and that I'm interested in end of life stuff? Maybe, but I think that this is so provocative, and just the range of music has got me going. And that's really the point. The description of your program should be so inviting that it would click a presenter to click play, or it would click that audience member, get them to click, purchase the ticket or invite friends, right? Just want to point out in their little program booklet here, with each program, they've included a short soundbite from a great review, unflinching and luminous, right? Great way to help us get inspired. Okay, so that's their first program, Beneath the Setting Sun. This is what they have for their second program here, Homeward Bound. Now, so I just want to point out, Beneath the Setting Sun is about end of life thing, looking at life as a whole journey. Homeward Bound is another archetypal idea here, the sense of home. Let's look at the lineup of composers. We've got Schubert, Garup, which I've never heard, Stacy Garup, Charles Ives, Ernest John Morin, again, someone I don't know, and Beethoven. Okay, so Homeward Bound. They say home is where the heart is. Okay. All right, that's like the biggest cliche ever. And I'm thinking, okay, what are we in for here? So let's find out. Faced with impending deafness, Beethoven leans into the storm of his inner vistas with a soaring masterpiece of vitality and richness. So we're going from the title here, Homeward Bound, and we're going immediately to the last work on the program. Then, while Schubert envisions his hero's journey, his hero's final journey to the spirit realm. Okay, also getting philosophical. We went from the very end to the very beginning of the program. Then Ernest Morin recalls the reedy waters, country lanes, and rolling hills of his youth. Stacy Garup celebrates the grandeur of the American West, and Charles Ives amplifies the little moments from cities and towns across New England, reminding us that no matter where we are, music always brings us home. Okay, so this does make sense to me as a program, and I liked the way this was described. First with the world's biggest cliche, and then we start at the end of the program. We go back to the beginning, and then we toggle back and forth. So it's interesting that you don't have to describe the program in the actual playing order, but you do have to make sense of the whatever you've chosen as your theme. And it certainly helps if your theme is not a terrible, terrible cliche. But the idea of home from these 5 very different perspectives of these pieces is intriguing, at least to me. And again, if someone sent me this description and said, "Do you want to go to this concert?" And I would say, "Hell yeah." This description has piqued my interest and made me feel like, okay, there's an entry point here, even with the works that I'm not familiar with. I'm like really curious, what are the artists going to say from the stage about these works, and what will this cumulative experience bring to me in my own understanding of home? So that's their second program. I just picked and chose among these, and I took 5. I mean, I took 3 of the 5. They're all really good. So check it out. This is again Chameleon Arts Ensemble of Boston, and their artistic director is Deborah Bolden. This is their 28th season. And I've been on their mailing list for a long time. I really do admire these musicians and this group. But this season, I don't know what it was, this programming, I just really was inspired by. And so I'm encouraging you to do what I do. When I see a great example like this, I save it. If I get an email, I'll save it in a folder for promo examples. If I get a physical thing, I hang on to it because I'm studying it in a way. I want to understand, okay, how did they put this together? Because if I just look at the 4 or 5 composers on the program, I wouldn't necessarily understand any kind of connecting thread. And I'm thinking, wow, how did they come up with this? So here we go with their last program of their formal season. Things seen right to left. That's interesting, right? What makes me think is the fact that, in the West, we read left to right, in the other part of the world, right to left. But I don't know if that's where we're going with this. It piques my curiosity, though. So let's look at the pieces. Eric Satie, a title that includes Without Glasses for violin and piano. Michael Stephen Brown, The Lotus Eaters. Maybe that's a clue. Ralph Vaughan Williams, Fantasy Quintet. Rina Esmail, Back and Forth for clarinet and piano. And Maurice Ravel, Piano Trio. Okay, let's see. If you had those five, if you had those five pieces in a bundle, would you know what holds them together, or why an audience might be interested in hearing them in a sequence like this? Like, what is that? Often that process of programming is a complete mystery for audiences. So it's one great thing to talk about when you're introducing the works from the stage. Because it's part of the creative process. Your programming is part of the creative process. And when you bring the audience in, you give them sort of a behind the curtain view on what goes into putting this all together. So here we go with the description. Vaughan Williams enthralls with a vivid impressionist daydream of the English countryside. And Rina Esmail weaves a tapestry of sound and memory from her ancestral home. Michael Stephen Brown brings Tennyson's Mariners and their psychedelic voyage to life, while Ravel, the illusionist, challenges our perceptions with a dazzling tour de force of color and texture. We close our 28th season with a fantastic trip down the rabbit hole where up is down, black is white, and left is right, with or without glasses. So the rabbit hole references to Alice in Wonderland about things not being as they appear at first. And that's that idea that we might be able to look at life from a very different vantage point. Now, in this description here, there's this sense of music from different parts of the world. And again, that idea of a kind of voyage and that the other world, that sense to something beyond the here and now, which was referenced in the two other programs. But this is very specific, things seen left to right. So there's this issue. How do we get to this program? And maybe I don't know what the process was like for Deborah or for whoever she has with her on the committee, on the programming committee. But the piece by Rina Esmail, Back and Forth, right, maybe gets to some of this. And the Lotus Eaters and a fantasy quintet, okay, I'm starting to get a sense of what the DNA might be that connects these works or connects the experience of these works. So I remember early on hearing another fabulous Boston area group, Radius Ensemble. Their director, I remember hearing her, Jen Montbach, talk about how she programmed. I don't know if Deborah does the same thing, but it can happen that you start with one or maybe two works that you're thinking, wow, I don't know why, but I'm hearing these two together in my mind's ear. And I want to figure out what else would sit well with these. And let's say you have the five, you have the sequence of five, but you haven't yet figured out what is the connecting points among these. Now, of course, it helps if any of the titles are programmatic in their nature, if they tell you, they tell you what this means. But the title "Things Seen Right to Left" is actually the title of Eric Satie's work, and then it says "Without Glasses." It's all in French. Not everybody is going to get that. Doesn't matter, right? Because then we get to the Lotus Eaters and this fantasy, back and forth, and the sense of what happens in the Ravel. They all have this kind of, all of these pieces are referencing this other way of experiencing life, which you could say is, okay, now we're going to look at it from a very different perspective. So that's my guess in how you might put things together. even if the works that you're thinking on a program are completely non-programmatic, so there's no kind of poetic title to deal with, you want to think about what are the moods, what are the references in these works? Is there anything about the story, about what was going on for that composer at that point in their life, right? These are all clues that you might be able to play with in helping an audience of non-musicians make a relevant connecting point. To saying like, okay, I've had some experiences in my life where I had to look at things from a very different perspective. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope this inspires you for better programming down the road. See you next time.